I turned off the upper ones. If the upper ones were on, I turned them off.
They are off.
Yeah, those upper ones.
I turned this down because it sounds like it's down.
Yeah, it needs to be down below about 450 before it sounds like it's down. Really? Wow. Well, we'll just see. I will visualize having had several cups of coffee. And perhaps that will invigorate the whole situation.
Classes and conditions.
Yes. So I think everybody has been here before, so you're familiar a little bit with the beginning of Wondro practice, the kind of frame of reference. And let's just take a moment to step into our morning of instruction and on the Mandala practice. Start by clearing the residual breath 3 times. Then just allow the mind to settle. No effort to make it settle. Simply don't feed anything any extra juice, whether you like it or you don't like what's going on. So this morning, we're going to review the Mandala practice. And given who's here and also the temperature of the day, we will be flexible about whether or not we actually finish before lunch. So we might go a little bit longer than 12 if it's not too much longer. If we can just finish, it depends on how much detail is needed on the specifics of actually doing the practice itself, the logistics. But I want to go through a little bit about mandala offering in general, and then to step through 3 ways to actually engage the practice, nominally divided into outer, inner, and secret. And don't get excited about the secret. Secret, the secret meaning of secret is it's secret till you see it yourself. It's what you have to see on your own. So until you see it, you could say it's secret. And as we all are familiar from the teachings, we're told over and over again that Buddha nature is right there. You just don't recognize it. And so many dozens of ways to say the same thing. So secret really refers to that which is right there all the time, but we don't recognize it. And I intend to go through each of those as a kind of a guided meditation, separate from the details of holding plates and dropping things and losing your place and all of that. So just to give some kind of frame of reference for how the views and approaches that you might bring at any point in a session. And it's good to have kind of the sense of those in mind. So in the middle of the intentional, I'll just call it intentional chaos, that is kind of seems to be very central to mandala practice, the ritual. In the midst of that, we have something to come back to in the middle of that. Some different ways of approaching it. To return to the general frame of reference of Ngondro practices, at different times, different frames are, that's the frame to use. But one of the ones that's most common is always to go back to the notion of purification and accumulation. So, purification of all the kleshas, the conflicting emotions, the mental dullness, even the fundamental ignorance. And the accumulations of the standard word is merit on one hand and wisdom on the other hand. And each one of those, I think you're all familiar enough with those terms to know that there's much more than is right on the surface that you would get out of Webster's. There's more to merit than what you find there, and similarly, the wisdom is a much different territory. So and we'll go back and do this kind of experientially, we'll step through each of the pieces, but if we have really begun to seriously contemplate the 4 thoughts that turn the mind, really start to ingrain those in our contemplations, they start to pop up in our life as we relate to situations, and relate to our own experience, what's going on, then our mind starts to shift. It starts to turn. The panorama of our experience, it comes into focus in a new way. And we make different priorities. We shift how we are, how we relate. And in particular, how we relate to what we're doing inside. And what we expect from the world. And with refuge and bodhicitta and the prostrations, this becomes more focused and clear, more directed. There's more clarity in mind. We're bringing to mind very clearly what is reliable. We bring to mind what makes true refuge. What should we really turn our minds and our hearts to? And we also bring to mind what we've noticed just looking around, that it's not just us that's in the situation that we find ourselves in. This is a universal circumstance. All beings find themselves stuck in the churn of samsaric activity, samsaric pursuit. The churn. I think the word churn is a good word. It gives some sense of that they're while caught up in this perspective, there isn't kind of a stable spot where you can go and hang out here and there. It's something's always coming and something's going. The waves are turning. So that kind of outlook, then we see that it's very much a common circumstance. And we can also see how intertwined all the circumstances that all beings find themselves in. And so we go for refuge, holding our own experience, but also the experience of all beings in our hearts as we turn our minds to refuge. In refuge, we have an opportunity using our bodies to engage very energetically. So you can say there's an aspect of purification of the body, purification of the mind as well, turning the mind. There's also accumulation of the energy of enthusiasm and connection with the practice. But traditionally, both refuge and the Dorje Sempa practice are considered to be more connected with purification. And certainly the Mandala practice, or the Dorje Sempa practice, the whole notion of just being completely filled, instead of being filled with the kleshas, being filled with the wisdom, bodhicitta energy of the bodhisattvas, is a very radical notion of purification. And when coupled with the four powers, it's very potent at a um, at the level of intellect and discernment, where we engage with the world, we engage with our experiences, and we decide what to do, we decide how to relate to things, make ethical choices, take responsibility for the content of what arises in our minds and our actions. But also the frame of reference for that, again, is this very radical notion of the possibility for our being to be completely filled with this purity, that the whole space there is pure. And from that point of view, it's not so much a matter of making the space filled and then forcing everything out. It's more just a matter of just relating to it being filled. Oh, but we come to Mandala practice, which is where 99% of people engaged in Wondro practice stumble. They sort of kind of hurtled over the little refuge hurdle a little bit, sort of, I felt like I kind of got that, yes, Dorje Sempa, yes, yes, I like the idea of turning my mind to the Dharma. I like the Buddhas, I like the Dharma, the Bodhisattvas, I like this, I turn my, good, it's good feelings for everybody. Oh yes, let go of all the, I don't need to identify as one filled with junk and stuff. I can let go, oh, great. And then there's Mandala practice. Our house filled with rice. We find it in our shoes, even though our shoes were in a different room. How did it happen? And we're dealing with this imagination of a vision of the cosmos that is not what we grew up with, So all these things. So we have lots of excuses for stumbling when it comes to Mandala practice. We have lots of reasons. And so I feel kind of an extra responsibility to steer into this territory in a kind of gentle and careful way, and to not just offer the recipe that's in the cookbook without any further instruction. It's just you have a really hard time getting there with that. Really hard time. There are a variety of sources on Wondro practice, and one of the ones that I've found very helpful is actually some teachings from Mingyur Rinpoche, and I don't know if they're in his new book. I don't know if they're in there or not, but there's a DVD set where he gives not super extensive, but some pretty good instructions, and he does go through the outer, inner, and secret kind of approaches in a pithy enough way, a condensed enough way that you don't necessarily get lost in the weeds. And so I'm going to try to cover some of that. But just in general, I found it helpful and kind of terrifying and humiliating, and very inspiring, all these things all at once, The terrifying and humiliating is because I have to say something. Kind of, I drew the short straw, so I have to sit over here as opposed to over there. So if I gave you the straw, you'd probably go, ooh. No, it's not a plastic. It's the one kind that you cut out of the field. It's an organic piece of hay. But it's very inspiring to read more and more about the mandala practice and get little bits here and there, little pieces. And I also understand why it would be absolutely overwhelming to read as much as I have, because the weeds would likely just grow thicker. It's just more information does not always bring more clarity. It's just one of the pieces of mandala practice, this practice of offering, it falls into, it's kind of easy to think of it falling into the accumulation of merit. It's very energetic. You're kind of bringing a lot of energy. You're directing that energy. You're offering. You're bringing all this stuff together. It's very energetic and does collect that. But there is also the thing that is probably more challenging in it is the aspect that's related to the accumulation of wisdom. And some of that is, it takes a while for it to settle in. It takes a while for it to settle in. When we think of offering something, we're very much wrapped up in the notion that I am offering this and it goes somewhere. And even within the first two turnings, or you could say the foundational practices of the Shravakyana, the basic practices, there's lots of offerings. And in the Mahayana, lots of offerings. And in there's some notion that things will work out better if I engage in offering. I'm investing my energy in the Dharma as opposed to investing it in other things. I'm offering that energy. But there is a way in which, within the mandala practice, a key principle that goes throughout it is this notion of letting go. It's, in that sense, you could say, it's not generosity to overcome stinginess, which is a good thing to do. One should engage in generosity to be helpful. One should overcome stinginess. But there is a way in which the letting go within mandala practice covers everything from A to Z, including the notion of one who is letting go. And so this is a principle that I think is very, very useful whether we're looking at the outer, the inner, or the secret. And the outer includes those things that we just consider stuff, anything in the universe, but it's not particularly ours, but it's definitely my universe. I'm the one experiencing it. It's not the same as the universe from over here. It's my universe. But there are a whole range of things within that. The inner, all the things that are related to me and mine very directly, from stuff that we own to people we know and relationships to our sense of my body, the me-ness of my thoughts and all that. And that goes on in But when we come down to letting go of the thought of there is an offerer, there is a me that's engaged in it, that becomes, that's where it becomes really clear that we're venturing into the territory of the accumulation of wisdom. From that point of view, there is all the hopes that we could realistically engage in about some benefit accruing. The benefit would go into the me account. It's the account in the merit bank that says me on it, and then good things will happen because there is a lot of merit in the me account, a lot of energy, good kind of energy in the me account. From the perspective of this deeper letting go, it's not that beneficial process ceases, but we stop looking at it from the point of view of expectation, sort of peeking to see how the account's doing, and that kind of expectation. And these views are all done while we're madly doing this. We're engaged physically with this. And this becomes an interesting challenge, you could say. A source of great frustration, annoyance, all kinds of things when we have the notion that our practice should be making us calmer, and we sit quietly, we don't say anything, and we even kind of lower again, kind of, you know, we get all the laboratory conditions right, and then there's this feeling, now it's easy to let go. A little bit, for a moment. But the physicality of the Mandala practice, and also the physicality of refuge, prostrations, these create this unavoidable, it's this object in the doorway. And if you say the object of the physicality and the chaos and the confusion is occupying the doorway, and therefore I can't go in because I know what practice looks like. Practice looks like come. If we have that, we do not recognize that this chaos and physicality in this engagement is actually the doorway. That is the doorway. It's very easy for us to make assumptions about how practice works based on whatever piece that we've done. And particularly the piece that we've done where it's felt successful, then we kind of, okay, this is my map, I know how to make this work. But it's that sense of success in that map can become its own obstacle. Being able to transfer some principles to new territory, particular territory where there's a map that is as complex as the 37 points of which is kind of and each one of those is actually just a doorway into something else. There are millions of, each one of those is millions of things. it's very different to go there. But we have to have some of the be able to take some of the flavor that Khenpo Rinpoche introduced when talking about the four dharmas of Gampopa, particularly the teachings about ordinary mind, and the notion that we can actually go through experience. There is no experience that is not ground for potential insight. So just kind of holding that, then the busyness and the complexity, the physicality, then we can start to look at it. Challenge, I think I hesitate to use the word from another tradition, but koan comes to mind, my sense of the meaning of koan, where it's a question that defies just a simple multiple choice, pick one of four, check it and go on. It's something that you have to look into it to see something that's inside there that is something that you couldn't see otherwise besides going inside it. You can't grab the answer and then go home with it. You have to go inside. It has to change you in some way. So I think that's one of the things too that I found helpful with the mandala practice. And one of the things, no, I'll pause there for a second. Pause there. Now, let's pause. Part of the method that Khenpo Rinpoche reminded us in working with ordinary mind, with working with confusion dawning as wisdom, one of the key methods that he went back to several times is what shows up in the mind training practices: regard all phenomena as a dream. And so that's kind of a key frame of reference for engaging in mandala practice. In order to go beyond that can allow us to take whatever it is that's in front of us that we think is this insurmountable challenge, or it's just contradictory, doesn't conform to my beliefs, all the things, and we'll talk about some of those more. But to be able to take that view and to use the very active practice, it's not sort of sitting back very passively, don't move, and I'll just stare and I'll think, it's like a dream, it's like a dream. Feels dreamy. But this very active engagement then makes it, it gives us actually some momentum for carrying something out into the we go from the intentional chaos to the unintended chaos of our lives, and we have perhaps a little bit more leverage to work something like that. One other just general point on mandala practice is many, if not all, sources will include teachings on the whole of the 6 paramitas: as a frame of reference for the mandala practice. So that's like, and that's all contained in there. So cultivating all aspects of the 6 paramitas is actually considered kind of core, and to the extent that those in the Torch of True Meaning, I actually haven't compared it sort of exactly, except for in one spot. I compared it word for word, and it's a little different in certain things. But in here, Jamgon Kongtrul goes through the paramitas, and he goes through the 3 trainings, the trainings of discipline, ethics, and prajna, or wisdom, and maps the 6 paramitas to those. So it's but the cultivation of the paramitas is part of that outlook of mandala. And even within that, you look and you say, well, how is generosity defined in the paramitas? And there are three classic points. One of which is the material offerings, whether to the 3 jewels or to sentient beings. Freedom from fear, which is an interesting one in itself. Like, oh, that's an act of so immediately it kind of opens up the sense of what generosity is. And then the 3rd classic division is the offering the Dharma as one is able. And that's definitely a sliding scale paramita, depending on what we're actually capable of doing at any one point in time. And within the mandala practice, all those dimensions can actually show up with there. The sense of that can all show up. So, how are we doing so far? Yes.
And can we give an example?
Well, I'll repeat it. Oh, there we go. We're all ready.
I forgot. When you sit here, you got to use the mic. Can you give one example while you're in the practice of what giving freedom from fear, how would that appear while you're doing that?
We can go into that as we go through the different...
Oh, okay.
Oh. The shoemaker has no shoes.
What was the 3rd one again? Could you repeat?
The offering of Dharma.
Offering of Dharma as you are able.
Yes. Yeah. You can see within any practice, you can look and you can find, oh, there's an aspect of cultivation of patience. Oh, here's an aspect of cultivating enthusiastic engagement or discipline. Oh, here's where ethics. The notion just of holding this view, having an appreciation for what are positive qualities, in order to offer them, to offer circumstance of positive quality. So there's the aspect of ethics within there. 1 to 4, yeah. And then the stability of mind. to just to be able to do it, and then the insight that can be developed. So you can see, and this is not clever in relationship to the mandala practice. This is something that you can see in any practice, and sometimes you have to think a little bit harder, and sometimes certain things are less than obvious. Like, what? How does ethics? Oh, I see. And that's actually how I would see also the protection from fear. Imagining an environment where beings, an ideal environment is one free of fear. And just to as long as we're on that thread, you could say the one of the 37 points of a couple of the points there's 7. They're just the seven points that are basically the qualities or the things of the universal Dharma ruler, the one who can create a situation that's very ideal. And one of them is the precious general, which, for anybody who's a little bit squeamish about the military, it's like, ew, I don't want any generals, can't we get rid of them? But this is the general who has never done anything contrary to the Dharma, creates a circumstance where nobody is threatened without harming anyone. Just creates, so there are things like that, and there are other elements that are where activity is carried out without any harm. We can go through those a little bit. The precious minister who finds resources and makes resources available without having to impoverish people and make them fear the tax collector. So, anything else, Cynthia?
Okay. To back up to where you were talking about the mandala also accumulating wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking there seems to be an aspect of purification there leading toward the letting go or the wisdom. And I'm figuring, well, we've already done Vajrasattva, we've already purified, but then I'm going, I'm still living and walking around and creating things that have to be purified again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like there's endless loops of some of these individual accomplishments, like of purifying.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking, purify greed, purify pride or envy or jealousy, or as I'm giving away, giving things,
letting go. Yeah.
And thank you for that reminder of what secret meant, because it's like there's that, but only after.
Yeah. Obvious only after the fact. There's something in, this is one thing that Trungpa Rinpoche said, talking about the mandala practice overall, this notion of letting go and letting go and letting go to the point where you have no sense of you have no sense of impoverishment. You have no sense of that there's sort of you just let go. There's no need to hang on to anything, and within that you can discover the kind of I would use the term something like the supreme okayness of that's kind of intrinsic, sort of an intrinsic okayness, something that's not dependent on having all the however you're defining the goodies, whether that it's not actually the okayness is not dependent on that, and having let go from all the different perspectives, finding that that's where he talks about this like kind of dignity and kind of this energy, and you can be there in the middle, as opposed to about worrying about whether or not that's going on. Stretch for a moment.